All right, and Mentor Minutes is live with another episode. I'm Cameron here in very toasty Las Vegas today, and I said I was going to mix up the timing that I was doing these. I do these live Q&As during the course of the day, Pacific Standard Time usually, and I wanted to do it a little bit later in the afternoon so that I could start getting a little bit more into Australia and Asia. I know I have a lot of followers over there who've been asking to be able to ask those questions live and in a live format. This is simply a place for you to ask about your questions and struggles with leadership, anything kind of bugging you in this upcoming week. Drop them down into the comment section. I'll be happy to answer those in real time. I like to start these off while we queue up some viewers in here with some questions I didn't get a chance to get to in yesterday's episode. And the first one I'd like to tackle is from Neil, and it's, when do you do micromanagement versus macromanagement? How do you manage that? And that's a very good question, because we talk about micromanagement and how bad it is, and it is one of the worst things you can do from an employee morale standpoint. It's one of the main reasons that people leave jobs is micromanagement. But if you spend too much time on macromanagement, you become disengaged with the organization, you become disengaged with what's going on, and you can't make those correct decisions. So the question is how do you manage that balancing act between micromanagement and macromanagement? And the big key for that is to schedule your micromanagement. One of the things that I recommend when I talk to my private coaching clients is to actually schedule once a week to do a deep dive into one particular aspect of your people's jobs, one procedure. Do a deep dive and ask yourself, what's going on with it? What could be done better? What could be, what maybe needs to be cut out of it to make it better? That sort of thing. So you do a deep dive. Also, when you're delegating tasks, you schedule for updates, for deadlines, for those sorts of things. And what that does is when you schedule your time to get into the details, it's easier for you to manage that so you're not going overboard. And that leaves you with the time to be able to work on the larger things, the big projects. And really, when we talk about macro management, a lot of what I say is to work on your priorities, your higher priority things. You want to be pushing the other things down. You don't want to micromanage them, you schedule them, but that macro management is those higher priority items that only you can do, that you can't delegate to somebody else. So I love that question. When do you micromanage? When do you macro manage? Well, to find the balance, I recommend scheduling the micromanagement, and that helps you manage that better for yourself so that you're not going overboard and getting all the negative effects of that micromanagement. Neil, that was a great question. Thanks for starting us out there. The next question comes from Angela, and it's one that's probably fairly common. She's been in her position as a assistant branch manager for 6 years and never seems to get that promotion to the next level, Angela. And it's a situation that a lot of us have experienced in our careers, and what I really recommend is, first and foremost, and you may have already done this, but for everybody out there that wants to take that next step, that wants that promotion, the first thing that you always do is you always make sure that your boss knows that you are interested in the promotion. And in your case, Angela, it may not be that you're going to the branch manager for that. Yeah, loop them in on that. But it may be that you go to the district manager, whoever the branch manager's boss is, and say, hey, just so you know, I'm very interested in moving up in the organization. Now, you may have already done that. And if so, then you move on to the next step. Because what happens is for those of you who haven't done it before, you ask your boss, hey, just so you know, I'm interested in moving up into a supervisor role, a manager role, a director role. What should I be doing to get that role? What can I do to make sure that I'm a prime candidate for that? And the answer is almost always, well, just keep doing a great job where you're at and your time will come, all right? Fine. They don't want to spend the time on giving you a real answer on that. That's fine. You then follow up 3 and 4 weeks later. Hey, just so you know, I know I mentioned that I was interested in moving up in the organization. Are there any special projects? Anything that you see that I could improve upon to help make that a reality? And you may still not get an answer in that case. but then you follow up another month later and start asking again. So you're really letting them know that you are being persistent, which is important. As far as moving up in the career in your organization, it's important that you let everybody know that you're interested and that you're seeking those opportunities to gain the knowledge. Now, it sounds like you already have that knowledge. And so in addition to asking for more and asking for those opportunities of your branch manager, of your district manager, I'm also going to ask you the question, all right, there's 2 reasons to leave a job. You're not learning anything, you're not developing your skill sets, and you don't have any upward mobility. And so in the cases of you not, it sounds like you are getting that information, you're building that skill set, you may have already built it and there's nothing else left to learn. Then the next question is are they going to invest in you and move up in the organization? I know you don't want to give up on that 6 years of experience, but moving over to another bank branch, or in another region or whatever else, moving into a different company could be the best long-term benefit for you, where you are looked at fresh. You are looked at as somebody who's already experienced in the role that you have. You probably move into an assistant branch manager role, but it may be that a year from now you do get that bump up. And so if you're not learning anything and you don't have the ability to move up in the organization, then you can go ahead and look to move on. It's not advice that I like to give, but it's reality and you owe it to yourself. But make sure that you're engaging with your branch manager and with the district manager to build up that skill set so that you're looked at as a prime candidate as we move on. I'm starting to get some questions here. If you have any questions, concerns, anything that is setting up for this week that you'd like to ask about that's on your mind, go ahead, drop down into the comment section and we'll go ahead and tackle those as we go. I've got a couple that I want to get to from the last session I didn't get a chance to get to yesterday. The next one is Vicky, and it's dealing with hateful and bossy coworkers who are peers. So when you have those around you in your peer group that are bossy, that are, as she says, hateful, putting people down, the way I first look at that behavior is bullying behavior. And I don't mean that to throw out a buzzword. I mean that to mean that if they are bossy towards you, if they are putting you down, if you stand up to them, they will often go find a different target. That's classic bully behavior. They pick on those who don't put up a fight. So I want you to look for your chance, Vicky, to put up a fight. All right? If it's something where they're asking you to do something, say, no, I'm in the middle of this. I will get to what you want help with in another hour. Or, I don't think you did that as well as all. Well, I think I did just fine. You made the same mistake last week. You didn't see me barking down your neck about that sort of thing. So look for those moments to stand up. All right? I don't generally recommend that you take it to your boss or that you take it to HR. Hey, it might escalate to where you need to do that, Vicky, so I don't want to totally dissuade that. But what that often looks like is it looks like you can't handle things. And so from a career growth perspective, your boss and their boss want to know that you can take care of difficult situations, and interpersonal conflict is something that is going to happen through everybody's career throughout their career. And so I look for you to try to tackle that yourself. Now you can look to find that common ground as well with those bullies. All right? Look to find that negotiation. If they're looking to be bossy and get you to do something, find the middle ground. Find the compromise. Be the bigger person. All right? But when they are being hateful, then call it out. Hey, I don't appreciate that. And do it publicly. All right? And like I say, pick your moments. Pick your moments where you might have something to rebut them. I'm not looking for you to pick a fight. Please don't take it that way. But I think standing up to that bullying behavior of those that are bossy and hateful is something that gets them off of your back and gets them to pause before they engage in that sort of behavior on an ongoing basis. So I hope that helps you out there. I know we've got a bunch of people on. I'm going to start handling those questions right now. I got one last one from yesterday's episode I didn't get a chance to get to. So if you have some questions, drop them down in the comments. I'll just start taking them in order here. And we'll all hopefully learn a little something or just at least give our brain some exercise in thinking about leadership and how to be better at it. Next question actually came in, and it was, what do you do when you get too much work and your management is terrible? Well, again, I'm going to go back to, because what I think was being the underlying question on here is, should I look elsewhere? Again, the only reason to look elsewhere for employment is if you aren't learning anything and if you don't have any upward mobility. Now, when you are given too much work, that's a challenge. Both of these are actually challenges. Bad management and being given too much work is a challenge. What happens a lot of times is those of us who are best at our job are the ones that are given more work to do. Not because we're being rewarded and they want us to gain responsibility and gain more experience so we can move up in the ladder. That happens plenty too. But a lot of times it's just they want somebody who they know is going to do the job and do it well. And so what happens is you almost get punished for being good at your job. And in those instances, you can ask your boss for priorities. Hey, I need you to work on such as great. I'm happy to get to that. Never, try to push it back. I am working on this, this, and this. So where does this fit into the priorities, or which one of these would you like me to do first? When they say they are all a priority, all right, your cheat for that and your way out of everything is a priority is, well, which one would you like done first? Because they can't answer, I want all of them done first. They may say, I want all of them done today. Okay, which one would you like done first? And that's one way of getting at those priorities when you aren't given priorities. That's one thing that's helpful. If you're in a leadership role, being given too much work is a challenge for you to develop your team and work on your delegation skills. I go back in my career, 10 or 15 years ago now, to a gentleman. We were working on consolidating all of the contact centers. And the person that started this role had a number of successes as far as bringing everybody under the same roof. And the organization had grown 5- and 6-fold. And the joke that was made was, if they aren't careful, all of a sudden I'm going to have 2,000 employees reporting to me, and they're not even going to realize it. It's one of those things where when people are giving you responsibilities, all of a sudden you're building yourself up and you're gaining that. And it might not happen as quickly as you want it to, but it does happen eventually. And so being given too much work is a challenge to manage that. You can ask for priorities. That's the way out of it. Now, bad management is also a challenge, and I get this a lot. What happens if my boss isn't holding anybody accountable? What if my boss isn't communicating? All of those things. I look for those opportunities for you to manage the relationship and step into that leadership role. It may be that your boss isn't motivating anybody in the department. They go in their office and nobody ever sees them. Fine. You can step into that role. You can reiterate the priorities of the organization. You can set up little contests. They don't have to be official contests. You can set those things up. And so when you have bad management, it can be frustrating. And if it stunts your growth, again, that's that opportunity where you might want to look elsewhere for employment, or you can be developed. Bad managers are chronic at not being able to develop a team, and that's one of those things that stunts your long-term career growth. So look at both of those, being given too much work and bad management, as opportunities to prioritize and to step up. Not fun, not necessarily the advice you want to hear in this case, but it is that opportunity if you look at it. Frustrating? Yes. But again, what are you going to do about it? What can you do? What action can you take? And I want you all focused on actions wherever possible in your careers. All right, I'm going to start diving into the questions as we've queued up some people here. I do want to encourage you, if you have any questions, anything that's popping up this week, anything you're not looking forward to, any big events that are going on, go ahead, ping questions down there. I'm happy to take them. I'm just a couple minutes behind now, so you almost get it in real time. Andrew, and it's good to see you here, Andrew. What is the best way to deal with a new boss who always thinks you are wrong, no matter what you say? Nobody on our team ever has an idea or thought good enough for the new guy. His immediate reaction is always no, or some other negative response. Andrew, one of the first things that you can do, and first thing that pops to mind, and again, you want to be mindful of this, is asking why. Okay, great, no. Okay, your no is fine. Why don't you think that's going to work? Or why don't you think that aligns with priorities? And that sets up the second part, all right? And that is, make sure that the ideas that you have and the comments that you make are in alignment with what the new boss's priorities are. It may be that they were brought in and they were given a priority by their boss to do this, and they simply haven't communicated it yet. So look for those things that are important to your boss and phrase your ideas so that they address those particular issues. So if they are worried about sales and you want a water cooler, I'll use a stupid example. Hey, if we have a water cooler in the office, then people aren't going to have to go all the way down to the break room. People are going to be in their seats more and they can make more sales calls, and that's going to help us to increase sales. Again, a silly example, but that's what you want to do, is make sure that the ideas that you have align with their priorities. And when they say, no, that's not a good idea, well, why not? What do you think? The other way of doing this is to make it sound like it's their idea. And I know nobody likes to hear this, but hey, if you want to make improvements in the organization, then hey, if you want to get your ideas heard, then this is sometimes what you have to do, is make the idea theirs. And so what you do is you simply lead into your idea and say, hey, Andrew, I know that you had mentioned in a meeting once about this, and I was thinking what you might be getting at is something along the lines of such and such. And so you lead with something that they said, lead with an idea that they have, and kind of just segue into that so that they have some ownership over what you're saying. And that may help that out just a little bit. The last thing that I'm going to mention on this is to be a resource for them. Okay, no, that's fine. You don't like my idea? Not a problem. How can I help you in this area? I know you've got plenty of ideas. Just let me know where I can help. I'm happy to do that. And so try to make yourself a little bit more of a resource. With so many of these things, whether you are dealing with an employee, for everybody out there, for so many of these things, whether you're dealing with an employee, whether you're dealing with a peer, or whether you're dealing with your boss, you often have to engage in this behavior multiple times. You have to have some perseverance with this to break the habits that are already in place with in most of these areas. In this case, Andrew, your boss is used to saying no. It's going to take 3 or 4 or 5 times of trying to exercise and flip these things around before they start softening and flip it to a yes. It's just human nature. We have some inertia behind our habits and our behaviors, and it takes a while for all of us to break out of those. So be consistent, be persistent in that, but look for those opportunities to align with their priorities, ask why it wouldn't work, and be a resource for them whenever possible. That's the only way I know to kind of get through to your boss or to anybody else who seems to be resistant to your ideas. Great question to start us off. Thanks, Andrew. And Cindy has the next one. I was hired to manage, there we go. There we go. The touch screen was getting a little funky there for everybody who was tuning in. I was hired to manage our interior renovations division, which is brand new in our organization. I'm building it from the ground up. It's now time to hire my subcontractors, individuals and companies. I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I have extensive experience with this. My question is, how do I work with my CEO when collaborating when we have different views on what I need in my department? What you want to do, Cindy, is as much as possible, you want to get ahead of this, okay? So you've already kind of identified it. I hope it isn't too deep in the weeds with this, but have a conversation with the CEO ahead of time before you're selecting people about what the goals are. And so if the goals are cost related, if the goals are service and timing related, I know that can be a big issue as far as contractors. Make sure that you have your list of priorities. So take a list of 5 or 10 things that you're looking for in your subcontractors and get with the CEO and make sure that you're prioritizing that list ahead of time. And then that makes that a little bit easier to have that conversation. Now, if you're talking in generalities, you will likely have differences on how that priority is. So you're having that conversation ahead of time, and you can look to make your case in regards to certain things. It can be that, hey, I know that cost needs to be down on this, but if the service level is higher, then that's something that actually decreases the cost in the long term. You can start having those conversations ahead of time. The other thing is you can ask for forgiveness instead of permission in a bunch of these cases. If you're highly confident that the way that you are going to manage it is going to be successful, you know what? Being a little bit aggressive in timelines can be one of those things where you can get your people in there and the CEO doesn't necessarily have as much say as you would like. But I'd like the idea of getting ahead of these things as much as possible. Now, when there are differences of opinion, get clear on the why. And look for those opportunities to fight the battle when you can fight it and not fight the battle when you can't fight it. There may be some issues. Cost is always a big one that pops up there. And it might be that it's not worth fighting that battle. But it is worth fighting the battle in regards to consistency, service, whatever else. So look to pick your battles, but try to get ahead of it as much as possible when doing this collaboration. And if you can, get clear on that and then leave the CEO out of some aspects of it. Okay? I don't want to say keep them in the dark, but the CEO, if they've hired you to do a job, they should let you do the job. There should be other things that they are working on. So tell them that that's what's in it for them, that you will run the final decisions by them, the final selections, and then you can again frame those selections a little bit as much as possible. So get ahead of it. Find ways, if you have, because I get the impression, and part of my advice on this one is that I'm getting the impression that the CEO is a bit overbearing and isn't going to necessarily take your feedback and is going to be looking to do the job, your job themselves, which isn't going to be something that is going to help you in the long run. So that's where part of my advice in being aggressive in cutting them out of the loop wherever possible is coming from. Hope that helps out, Cindy. And I know that's a tough spot to be in, but is not completely uncommon. Sue has the next question for us, and it's what are some good ideas for rewarding employees that doesn't cost a lot of money? My favorite, and one of the ones that they got the biggest response was parking spaces, actually. If you can give out parking spaces, that's a great way to do it. Rewarding employees with an extra 15-minute break, or a 15-minute late in, or a 15-minute early out doesn't cost a lot of money. A lot of times it can cost zero money. Well, it costs their time, which factors into it a little bit. But that's a great way of doing it. One of the things that I talked about in yesterday's episode was rewarding people publicly. Simply putting everybody's results and their performance up on a big board in the break room where everybody can see it is a rewarding exercise. It's also an accountability exercise. So if all of a sudden Cameron has a magnificent sales day, everybody's going to see it up on the board that I set a brand new record for myself as far as sales is concerned. That's another great way. You don't have to run a contest or anything. You can, don't get me wrong, and it's always good to do that, to kind of juice that up a little bit, add a little excitement, a little bit of fun into the workplace. But even just tracking that stuff publicly is a great way to do that. But you can, like parking spaces, those are great. Little 15-minute, breaks or whatever else are another great way of doing it. But depending on your organization, what is it that your team values? Do they value which register they're at if they're in a retail environment? That may do it. Do they get to pick a shift or an area that they're addressing? That can be part of it. What do they value in their work? And that's what you can go ahead and reward them for if you don't have a budget. There's all kinds of ways to reward people if you don't have a budget for it. And I would recommend, don't take my advice for it. When we get done here, Sue, go over to Google and put in employee rewards that cost no money. And I bet you're going to find a bunch of lists. I haven't Googled that one myself, but I bet you're going to find a bunch of things that get your brain thinking about some opportunities there. Love the fact you're looking to reward the team, and it does not take a budget at all. Andrew has a follow-up here. He was promoted from another district. We think it went to his head a bit. His nickname is Mr. Perfect. Yeah. And what I will also say in that, Andrew, is I mentioned perseverance and persistence in dealing with those difficult individuals to try to change that behavior around. But what also happens is that time catches up to them. When somebody has made a bunch of poor decisions, when they aren't getting the feedback from their team, that's going to catch up to them. And all of a sudden, Mr. Perfect is going to get a couple of dings from their boss because of performance-related issues that could have been addressed if they had just listened to you in the first place. But I really want to hit that one more time, and that is look to be a resource for Mr. Perfect. Hey, is there anything I can help you with? Any jobs you need done? Or is there anything that you see that we could be improving on that I can help with? Look to be a resource and work on them from the inside. That can be something that can help out in the end. Nothing I can't handle. Yes, always a pleasure. Yeah, Cindy, and I know that having that is tough, but you try to get ahead of it as much as possible. I can't say that enough, because what happens is you have the argument ahead of time when you have an opportunity to switch somebody's mindset around, and you also have the ability to potentially try to phrase things in different ways. It may be that you want a particular supplier and you need to pump up this particular area of them that the CEO pays attention to get them across the finish line. I know you can handle it, and I know that if you have any struggles, we'll pop on here and chit-chat about it some more, but I'm sure you'll be able to address it. So everybody else that's on there, if you have any questions, I'm caught up right now, so I can tackle them in real time here. I will, while everybody jumps down into the comments section to ask, generic questions about leadership or a particular employee issue that you're dealing with this week, or a particular peer or boss issue that you're dealing with. Those are always good ones. You can drop them down in the comment section. I will give a shout out. You'll see it posted up here after we're done with this live session. I post up the links for my podcast. I do recordings of each of these sessions, throw them up on the podcast, and it's a great thing for you to listen to on your commute in, to have in the background occasionally. A lot of these issues don't pop up necessarily all of the time for people. So you might be listening and you might not find any of it particularly relevant right now, but lo and behold, next week your boss is being a little maybe overbearing like Cindy, and I hate to phrase it like that, but I'll just keep doing it. And so you'll have these things in the back of your mind that you've already thought about a little bit, and you just give your brain some exercise thinking about leadership, thinking about how to be a better leader. And that is so much of learning, is putting it into practice and seeing how other people are putting it into practice. The best way to learn is not necessarily from your own mistakes and your own struggles. The best way to learn is from other people's mistakes and other people's struggles. And so I hope that these sessions help you out with that as we talk through different issues that other people are dealing with throughout the world in leadership and development. So last call, if anybody has any questions out there, drop them down into the comments section. I know I'm a little bit late here. What is it? 5:30 almost Pacific Standard Time, which is a little bit late, but that's great for those over in Australia and Asia who have been able to pop onto this live session instead of following up in the comments. The department has a regular department meetings, and I have been requested to join these. Great follow-up here from Cindy. Join these meetings. These meetings have nothing to do with my areas of expertise, and I find them to be a waste of my time when I have so many other responsibilities on my plate. How do I respectfully decline and help them to understand at the same time what's going on? You're going to want to have a kind of a... No, you don't want to have a frank conversation. Otherwise, you'd probably have that frank conversation already. Sharon, good to see you here. I know still bright and early in the Monday morning there in New Zealand. You guys are ahead of us as always. But Cindy, find an excuse. That's one of the best ways of doing it. Find an excuse. So I know yesterday you had mentioned client calls. So try to schedule client calls during this particular meeting. And that opens up the discussion for you. So look for an excuse to open up the discussion of, hey, and is there any value that I bring to these? I know you guys are exterior and I'm interior renovations, but I haven't caught any particular value that I'm bringing. Is it okay if I just show up occasionally? And so what you do is you have the excuse to open the conversation, and then you give them some sort of compromise. And it may be that, hey, is it okay if I just make maybe every other one of these, or one or two a month? And that can be something that that jumps out at them and makes that a little bit of an easier transition away from them, and that can hopefully get you over the hump on that. Because yeah, it's terrible to be invited to those meetings and just sit there and waste your time. Or make yourself available. If they have questions, they can call you in. Nobody's going to really want to go for that, but that's going to be something that you can go ahead and throw out there. Or if they have a particular reason, but put them on point. But find that excuse, give them a compromise, and then you can follow that up a month later and say, hey, I know I've been coming to these only, once or twice a month. I do have this going on. Is this something that maybe if you have something particular you can invite me to, that sort of thing? To try to get yourself out of those meetings as much as possible. Meeting management is so difficult. And I tell people all the time, you can manage your own meetings, cut down half the frequency, half the number of people, and half the time that you usually would. And that'll save you a ton of time from your own meetings. But it's tough when you start getting called into those other meetings, because there is that constant mindset of the more people that are in this meeting, the more important it must be, and the more important I am as well. Suzanne, good to see you here. Hope that helps Cindy. Matt has the next question for us, and it's, what do you say to a manager who is always negative Nelly? You go to have a team huddle for the day, and he says to his associates, I would sooner be fired than go to a huddle. Just his way of showing negativity. This is just one of many things throughout the day he publicly talks about in a negative way about the team as a whole. And what I would throw out there, I'm glad you like that, Cindy. What I'd throw out there, Matt, is what I do in a lot of these cases is recommend that people ask the other person, well, how would you prefer to, in the case of a huddle, well, how would you prefer that we communicate? So instead of being negative Nelly all the time, and instead of presenting problems, it could be that the huddles aren't as effective as they could be. All right, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that there's a grain of truth to what they're saying. But throw that out there. Well, what would make the huddles beneficial? How should we communicate? Well, and so it becomes the boss is out on vacation. Well, we're not going to get anything approved. Well, what can we do to get ahead of that? What would you recommend? And so what happens is you're trying to flip that person's mindset from the problems to the solutions. That's one way of handling it. The other way of handling it is to be the advocate wherever possible. You don't want to be positive Polly, shall we say, flip the negative Nelly name tag around a little bit, but you can pick your moments. Where I don't know what you're talking about. I love the huddles. The huddles are where I get the best information because I can actually ask what's going on if I have a question in regards to something. And so you're throwing up that resistance just a little bit. A lot of that negativity is kind of almost a gossip thing. And it feeds on itself in somebody's mind too. And if that person is negative in a vacuum, where they aren't getting that sort of reinforcement, they're less likely to engage in that behavior on a long-term basis. And so ask them questions. Well, what don't you like about that? I like the huddles. The huddles are a great way for me to get the information quickly, and I can ask those questions quickly as opposed to emails and email chains that go around all the time. Oh, email's another thing. Well, what would you recommend we do differently other than email? Well, maybe have a huddle. Duh. That's the sort of mindset I understand with a negative Nelly. But try those couple of techniques and see if that gains a little traction. We've talked a lot. It's going to take some persistence. People don't turn around their behaviors overnight. So 3, 4, 5 times. And maybe some, partners in crime can kind of help you out with this as well. Make it a little game where you can throw out these things to the negative Nelly. I know that they have a tendency to bring down the entire workforce, but make sure that you are presenting some resistance to them and not just giving them free rein to be as negative as they please over the course of the day. All right, if anybody else has any questions out there, I was able to sneak in some more. Any of my friends from Australia or New Zealand, I know you're on here. Anybody, I know India and Pakistan are jumping in here on a Monday morning for them. So if you have any questions, drop in down here in the comment section. Kelly has the next one for us, and it's, how can leaders support the physical and mental health of employees, especially in an industry that is constantly giving of themselves physically and emotionally on the daily? That's a great question, Kelly. Really fantastic question, and something that's been cropping up more and more is the encouragement of that physical and mental health. And what you're looking for is you're looking for the first thing. I like to start out small, but you can just start out very small and specific. Okay, and what I mean by that is it may be that you're encouraging people to go to the gym once this week? Who went to the gym once this week? Put a gold star. I mean, go back to kindergarten and first and second grade in primary school. Put gold stars next to people's name when they engage in the sort of things that are important for their mental and physical health. It may be, hey, I left on time. I deal with one person down actually in Australia who has a real go-getter, and a go-getter that they are concerned about, that they don't want staying till 8 o'clock at night and working 6 and 7 days a week, that sort of thing. And so it's really that encouragement of, hey, I'm going to the gym. You want to go with me? Hey, I'm heading out to the gym. You should head out too. Or it can be forcing them to take their lunch away from their desk. That was one that cropped up last week, was how do I get my people to take their lunch away from their desk? Well, do something communal with them. Find those little things, all right? So much of that physical and mental health is a habit. And so you have to break the habit. And the easiest way to break that habit is starting small and specific. Now, also in regards to physical and mental health, for those of you that have a challenge with that work-life balance, one of the things that I always recommend is look to improve the quality of your time away from work. And what I mean by that is get clear on what you like doing. It could be, I like going to a bookstore and reading the magazines for free. I like going and getting coffee and watching an episode on Netflix while I'm sitting there having coffee. I like going out to eat. I like cooking food. I like going to the gym. I like playing golf. What is it that you enjoy doing in your free time? And you can talk to your employees about this. This is something that wouldn't have been talked about a decade ago, but is a very hot topic. But talk to them. What is it that you like to do outside of work? And then encourage them to do exactly that. And when they go golf, when they go out to a new restaurant, when they go see a movie, put a gold star up. Give them a pat on the back and encourage that behavior, and encourage it then consistently. When they start small, then you can go ahead and move on. Now, there's lots of things as far as supporting it from a procedural standpoint. When people feel burnt out, you give them a half day. You encourage people, and you keep an eye on people who've built up vacation time that they might not end up taking by the end of the year. You know that if they haven't planned anything in that last 6 months of the calendar year, whatever that is for them, then you need to be encouraging them. If they've got 2 or 3 weeks, hey, you need to take something now, or you need to take some 3-day weekends, some 4-day weekends. That's a great way to work on your mental health on those sorts of things. If you're sitting down, encourage them to stand up. But again, I'm talking about all kinds of possibilities, and I don't want you to hit it that way, because when you're kind of scattershot with your priorities, you get scattershot results. Start specific, work on that, build some momentum in that area, and then work with the next thing. I hope that's helpful for you, Kelly. And I love the fact you asked the question, because that's so important in this day and age for all of us, for leaders and for employees, to be at top physical and mental capacity so that we can do a great job. That's the business case for it, is that if people have solid physical and mental health, they're going to bring more energy, and they're going to bring more ideas, and they're going to bring more mental energy to the job as well. So if anybody has any questions out there, now's your last chance. You got about 10 seconds. And again, if you haven't signed up for my podcast, I'll have the link up here in probably 5 minutes after I close out this session, or you can head over to my Facebook page and the links are there at the top. I'd love to have you on subscribe to the podcast. I'm really pleased with how that's coming together and the traction that it's getting. And I just think these simple exercises of working through leadership problems, leadership struggles, is something that just builds up your mental capacities and your mental strength in your leadership, and that's going to be the thing that carries you forward in your career. Kelly, I'm glad you liked that answer, and I really appreciate you and everyone tuning in. I will be doing another episode tomorrow, probably midday is when I kind of have it loosely scheduled, and I will see everybody then. Take care, bye.